Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile, and with me again there is Alistair McKenzie. Hello, Alistair. How are you tonight?
Could be better, I think, after what we endured earlier. But yeah, I think we might have feared this is coming, and I suppose the only thing we can say is at least it's just a dress rehearsal for the Coppa Italia final. So some lessons to be learned from what we saw today, I think.
I was thinking today, maybe Inzaghi trick Gasperini and make him think, yeah, in the final we're gonna play with Wallace and Marzic, etc. So you get prepared to this, and then instead we have Felipe Ramos and Lulic playing. Could that be what happened today?
Well, I was going to say, who was that Wallace guy up front for Atalanta? He's a real talent, you know. He's a goal and an assist. He was on fire today. So when you've got a striker like that on form, there's not much you can do to stop them, you know.
Yep, yeah. Alistair, is it better like this year or worse last year when we lost at the last match, the Champions League? I mean, now it's over. It was already complicated, but at least we know that now there are no chances. So, is it better now or last year?
I think it's easier to recover from this. I think obviously a lot was made of the mental impact and the kind of fallout from that result against Inter, and I think that had definitely some sort of psychological impact on the players, on the team. You can maybe see that a little bit in the way that they played against the big teams at the start of this season. And I think if it happens this way, where you're basically just not good enough, I think that's easier to front up to. I think as a team in the summer, it's easier to say, look, I think we weren't good enough this season. We've lost at home to Chievo. We've lost at Spal. We've dropped points against Sassuolo at home, you know, in a crucial part of the season. And, you know, the club hierarchy won't have the excuse now to say, well, you were that close to the Champions League. That means this is a Champions League team. So now we're saying Champions League is the objective for next season, which is what happened last summer. And you know, Tari and Lotito talking about the Champions League being the objective without really changing an awful lot. Well, this goes to show we need more. You know, we need more investment in this squad if that's to be the objective. And last season was probably an overachievement on many regards. But the other thing is, it's just so annoying that Lazio gets 72 points last season. This season, that'll be enough for third place. And you know, last year it wasn't even enough to finish in the Champions League spots. So, yeah, lots of frustrations.
Yes, you're right. It was a completely different season last year, and I think one of the things is Luis Alberto, Milinkovic-Savic, Ciro Immobile, that were great players last year, are not playing as well this season. Now the question is, did they play too well last year, better than they could, or this year they didn't perform as they should?
Well, like I say, I think it's a bit of both. I think there were definitely players who overperformed last season, and you know, I was asked this question about consistency earlier and why Lazio are so inconsistent this season. And the point I made was that, you know, which we've been talking about for a while, is that the key players in Immobile, Milinkovic-Savic, Alberto, when Lazio were up against it and had difficulties last season, those players were able to pull us through because they were all having a kind of phenomenal, you know, the season of their careers basically at the same time. And all of them have got worse. I mean, it's quite hard to really name any players who were in this Lazio squad last season who've improved this season, perhaps with the exception of Patrick and Bastos, I'd say.
Caicedo,
but, you know,
come on.
Caicedo, obviously. But they're in terms of the kind of starting 11 last season, the guys who got us to where we were, I don't think any of them have really managed to maintain that form or improve on it. And that's been the main thing, because on top of that, you can say, fine, you can expect that to happen because you can't expect to have the season of your life every year. What you need then is that the squad depth shines through and your backup players shine through. And that's something that's been the real disappointment for me, is that I thought, looking at our summer transfer activity last year, that we'd improved the squad with the likes of Badel, Berisha, Correa, so on coming in. And actually, Correa is probably the only one who's made an impact. And even then, he's not made as much of an impact as we might have liked. So I think it's all these things together, really. But, sometimes you need to have a kind of... I think we'll get onto a conversation about what constitutes failure, but I think sometimes you need to have a worse season in order to be able to look at yourself honestly and address the problems that are there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, as you were saying last year, probably Tare and Lotito thought that the team was good, maybe even better than Inter, Milan, and so on. And this year, instead, you can see that it's not like... Maybe, honestly, Lazio is a better team than Milan, probably. But if you check, Milan paid Piontek 35 million euros, Paqueta 35 million euros. They spent a lot of money to improve, and you can see that Milan is better than last year. While you cannot say the same thing about Lazio. You cannot say that Lazio is a better team. And as you were saying, and I think we're going to talk this in the other podcast, but the summer transfer didn't work out. If you take off Acerbi, that went and replaced De Vrij, and I think it was an improvement compared to De Vrij, and Correa, who replaced Felipe Anderson, but as you were saying, he didn't play always well as expected. All the others have been irrelevant or didn't contribute as expected. I'm thinking especially of Berisha. I still remember this summer when I said, look, guys, Berisha is going to be a great signing, and he hardly played. So, but again, if you spend only 5 million euros, you can buy Marusic. You never can buy Paqueta or players like that, So Lotito and Tare has to sit down and really understand what they want. If they want to compete for the Champions League, then they have to spend more money than what they're doing there, or spend it better. Otherwise, Lazio will always be like this, I think. Fighting for the Champions League, fighting for the Europe League, and struggle at the end of the season. Alistair, the other thing I really appreciate was Gasperini after the match in the press conference, when they asked, is it better to qualify for the Champions League or to win the Coppa Italia? Well, he said exactly the opposite of what Inzaghi said a couple of weeks ago, that the Champions League would be a much better achievement for him. I think Lazio should have the same mentality. Instead, Inzaghi went completely the other way. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I think a trophy is a massive thing, and that should never be underestimated. But realistically, the achievement of qualifying for the Champions League is a greater achievement as a football team, because you've done it over 38 rounds against every team twice. The achievement of getting to the Coppa Italia is a big one, but realistically, what we've done is beaten two good teams, and we'll need to beat a third to get that. So it's a very different thing. But I mean, we have a great record in that competition. We enjoy that competition, and I think all of us listening to this will really enjoy the idea of winning another Coppa Italia and having yet another trophy in the cabinet, while Roma's 11-12 year wait for a trophy goes on, which is something we quite enjoy talking about. So I think that you should never ever underestimate how important it is, how significant it is to win a trophy. And I think for Simone Inzaghi, that's going to be a massive thing for him as a Lazio coach as well, to be able to get his hand on a major trophy, because he talks about the Supercoppa quite a lot, like it was the crowning glory of his life. And the Supercoppa, in a lot of people's eyes, isn't really a proper trophy. I think that we really enjoyed winning that because it was against Juventus and because of the manner of the win. But I think that the Coppa Italia is a big deal for a club like Lazio. We shouldn't ever be getting snobby about that at any point. The other difference is obviously the financial one, though, because the Champions League opens doors to be able to lay the foundations for making that success a more long-term thing, whereas the Coppa Italia doesn't come with those financial benefits. So I suppose it depends what your long-term objectives are as well. I think the Champions League qualification probably does more for you as a club, as a long-term thing, but the Coppa Italia is something that you'll remember. We'll remember that cup final for years. If we win that, we're not going to remember, what it was like to draw on the last day against Empoli or whatever to finish in the top four. It's a totally different thing.
Well, I think talking about Lazio that have won Coppa Italia recently, that is the point to reach the Champions League, and I think it's better to qualify for the Champions League than the Coppa Italia, especially if you're a team like Lazio that have won Coppa Italia in the last couple of years. So I thought Gasperini quotes were positive, and I don't want to say that Inzaghi at a certain point a couple of weeks ago said, okay, after beating Milan we are focusing all on the Coppa Italia instead of keeping the chance alive of reaching the Champions League. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if playing Wallace today was one of the reasons. It's because he wanted to rest Felipe Ramos for the Coppa Italia final.
Well, he's going to get a good night's sleep, isn't he? It's not for 10 days. No, I mean, it wasn't that. I mean, he said he was obviously asked about this. I was at the press conference after the game, and it was one of the first questions he got was about why he picked Wallace, and he just was basically saying he was happy with how he'd done against Sampdoria, and he'd been training really well, and so he wants to give him a chance. And I think that there are kind of merits and demerits for this with Inzaghi, because it's a very Inzaghi thing to do, because one of his great positives as a coach is his ability to create this amazing atmosphere of unity within the group, within the squads. And part of the reason he can do that is that everyone trusts him and everyone has a feeling that if they train hard and if they work hard, they'll be rewarded. And as a result, you do see Inzaghi give everybody a chance. And there you go. I mean, Wallace comes back into the team almost completely unexpected. But Inzaghi was being very defensive, and he said, I'm always going to defend my players, and he's quite right to do that. But it doesn't mean that he's immune from criticism for making this choice, because we were talking about this last weekend. The fact that he'd come across this defence that was working in Felipe, Bastos, and Acerbi. And there are so many other changes taking place around the team with the suspensions and injuries in midfield and the strikers and so on, that why is he changing the defence again? And I think I raised the point last weekend that the thing that worried me the most was that in Bastos and Wallace you have two players who aren't very comfortable with the ball at their feet. And we saw that today again. I mean, if anyone hasn't made up their mind yet about Wallace being able to play as a ball-playing defender, playing out from the back, now they should, because I've said it time and again, I don't think he's a terrible defender. I just think he's a defender who doesn't suit playing in this system at all, and he would be far better at another club where his job is basically to get rid of the ball and clear it. And I think he would actually be a decent defender in that kind of system, but this isn't where he should be playing.
I think he's convinced he's good with the ball on his feet, because you can see that he's asking the ball when he's free. So, but yeah, I agree. I really hope this is going to be the last official match for Wallace with the Lazio shirt. And as you said, probably it's even better for him. After the second mistake, all the stadium were whistling him, and obviously.
Yeah. What do you think of that? I meant to ask you about that.
It doesn't help. It's not something that will help your team. Absolutely not the player. So I understand the disappointed after two incredible mistakes from a player, but it doesn't help, and didn't help the team to recover, and didn't help the player after that mistake. So, but can you complain the fans for doing it? I don't think so.
I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I think that, yes, we've seen him make mistakes before. We've seen him, basically lose his own derby before, and everyone's had enough. But I think at that stage of the game, the stakes were too high to just completely destroy it like that. And it was already, by the way, at the stadium today, it was already a bad atmosphere because the Corva Nord weren't singing. They were protesting about the ticket prices for the cup final, so they came in and they emptied out the front rows, and they just stood there and they either booed or they cheered, and they didn't sing any songs. And this is one of the biggest home games we've got this season, basically, given that we would have been within a point of Atalanta with a win. We were 1-0 up within 3 minutes. That's when you need the crowd to get behind this team. And as soon as that mistake happens, you've still got more than enough time to get yourself back into the game. But as soon as everyone started criticising their own players, the rain came down, and I just thought, right, this is done. Right, and from that moment, I didn't see anything from that team to suggest that they were going to get back into it. And I think they gave up on the fact once the fans turned on their own player. And I don't think there's an excuse for that. I don't understand the idea of doing it then. It's fine to be critical of your own players, but in a match of that magnitude with the score at 2-1, that's not the moment to start laying into your own player when there's still so much to play for.
I agree with you, but you cannot blame the fans for this performance. I mean, Lazio didn't lose because of the fans today. And that mistake, those mistakes, because it wasn't just one of Wallace plus the own goal. I mean, it's simply unbelievable. So, and the other point that you said, Lazio stopped playing, and again, I didn't like Inzaghi's substitution. Why Caicedo, that I thought it was the best player Lazio had in the first half, came off, and not Ciro Immobile, that again had an average performance, to be honest, to be kind with him.
To be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think he played well at all. He had a couple of chances. Again, he didn't score. I don't know what to say about Ciro Immobile. But
I'll say it for you. He shouldn't be starting at the moment. It should be Correa Caicedo. But given you have to be. My article I wrote this week was about this. That whether Inzaghi picks on form or reputation at this stage of the season, he's been let down by his big players all season long. And when he gives guys like Cataldi, Parolo, and Caicedo a chance, they're doing well. They're doing a good job. But as soon as he has the option of having his favourite players back, he'll put them back in the team. And I wrote on Twitter before it happened, because I saw Correa warming up, and I said, right, Correa's coming on. He should be coming on for Immobile, but he won't be. He'll be coming on for Caicedo. And then 2 minutes later, the board comes up, and it's obviously Caicedo comes off. And Inzaghi was asked about that in the presser, and he tried to say that, Caicedo was on a yellow card, and that was the main difference, and that's why Caicedo came off and not Immobile. But come on, I mean, it's one thing being loyal to a player, but it's another thing when you've got one guy who's absolutely on fire at the moment and another guy who can't seem to get anything right.
Plus, Alistair, when he talks about the yellow card, it makes sense if you're talking about Leiva, because you know that in that position he's in dangerous situation when he get a yellow card. You cannot say the same thing for a striker. I mean, how many times do you remember a striker getting 2 yellow cards in a match if it's not for, protesting or doing something incredible in a match? It's really hard to see a a striker getting sent off because he makes two fouls that are yellow card. Come on. And I don't love Caicedo. I've never been a great fan of him, but he's playing better than Ciro Immobile. He's the top scorer of Lazio this year, so this tells you a lot. And again, I thought all the dangerous chances was with Caicedo close to the ball or touching the ball. So I didn't want to say that this helped Atalanta, but I think it did. And the other problem is, again, it's not the first time that Correa comes in, maybe plays 10 minutes well, and then disappeared. Boom. Correa wasn't playing anymore. And Atalanta hasn't got amazing players, but they all play, all 11 plays, and all 11 give everything. Well, I've got the impression that, especially this year, we saw some Lazio player hiding in some times of the matches. Luis Alberto again. He played well in the first half, not that much in the second one. Maruzic, I think he was missing. He was gone in a certain point. They had to get him back on the pitch because he was nowhere. And same thing Correa, And I know a lot of our fans love Romulo, but I think if you're fighting for the Champions League, you have to have a better option than Romulo starting in the winger. So, yeah, while Atalanta probably has three good players that are Gomez, Zapata, and Ilicic. All the other are good players that fight, average players, not amazing players, but they all fight. They all play for 95 minutes altogether, while I don't think Lazio's doing it. And this is one of the biggest reasons for me why Lazio didn't play that well this year.
Yeah, I agree. And that's that kind of brings me on to something else I was wanting to talk about, which is this problem with the second half. And that's part of the problem, I think, is that we're obviously dropping off in the second half of games recently. That's a problem we've talked about before, whether that's fitness, whether it's concentration, whatever it is. But it's also just this mentality thing, and you can kind of see it. And when I said there that once people started booing Wallace and the rain came down, I just realised the game was over. And, that's not just being pessimistic. That is coming from having seen this played out time and time again already this season. And it reminded me a bit of the Inter game back in November, I think it was last year, when there was, this storm and we didn't know if the game was being played until about 3 hours before. And Lazio started that game pretty well. And then as soon as Inter scored, second half, they just didn't look bothered. It was like, well, this game's over. The heads down. And I was looking at the team today as after the goal went in, the Wallace one, all walking back to the centre circle, shoulders up, head slumped. And I was just thinking, come on, where's your guy in the middle there, clapping his hands, hitting people on the back, getting you G'd up, saying, look, this is fine, it's 2-1, but we've got half an hour to go, we've got time to resolve this, we're the home team here, we can do this. And I was looking around that team and everyone just seemed completely given up on the whole thing. And there's only a certain amount Inzaghi can do, and he does everything he can from the sidelines. I mean, he's basically playing half the time, but he is still on the sidelines. You need someone there who's going to grab that. And we've got guys like Acerbi and guys like Leva in that team who you want to be that guy, but you're not always seeing it. And I think this is such an issue, is that I even said, 3 minutes into this game, my editor, one of the sites, texted me saying, not a bad start after Parolo had scored. And I said, yeah, but wait for the second half. And then lo and behold, it happens again. So it's so frustrating to see this and see the team basically almost accept their fate and not really try and react to it in a positive way.
I think this is one of the biggest problems with Lazio, and not only this year, even last year. When things go bad, there's no reaction. You don't have a player that, starts saying, okay, give me the ball, I'll fix it. And I think you have two options when things go bad. Or you react playing great football like Atalanta does. Atalanta hasn't got a leader but play great football, and so playing better is able to react to this situation. And in fact, Atalanta, I think, is the team that have won more points after going down in the score. Or you have a leader, someone that put the team on the shoulder and get it back. And Lazio doesn't have both of them. No leaders, unfortunately, and not playing enough well football to react. And this is why, players like Luis Alberto, when things go bad, they tend to disappear. And then we don't have other talented players that can change things. Again, Correa as well, when things got bad, he disappeared. So, and I think, I don't know, Alistair, if you agree, if you keep buying players for 5 million euros, then this is what you're going to get. Maybe they have some quality, but they cannot be champions if you buy them at that price, because, they're not stupid selling you a player for 5 million euros if they think it's Messi. And I think it's lack of leadership, lack of winning mentality. I think in this team, no one won a Scudetto ever. I think Leva is the only one who played the Champions League in this team. I think, these are things very important for a winning team. So I think this is something that Tare and Lotito should think about. They need winning players that know what it takes to win. And, if you think about the experienced player, Acerbi didn't do it. Parolo never did it. Leva won a Champions League with Liverpool, I think. So he's the only one who did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree with an awful lot you said there, to be honest. But I mean, they obviously come at a price. You can't, to buy champions, you need to pay for champions, and that's not something that clubs necessarily been willing to do. And it comes back to, I mean, it's another thing I was thinking today. I mean, we'll get on to, we've had already a few questions about Simone Inzaghi, which always comes up after a defeat. And I was looking at this today and I was thinking, yeah, and it seems like a strange time to be saying this, but I was thinking, God, for a former striker, he's not actually done a bad job with this defence. Because if you think about this, which of these defenders in this team would you say are Champions League quality? And I include the wing-backs. I think Francesco Acerbi is the only defender in the Lazio team who you would say would look comfortable in the Champions League. Maybe Stefan Radu at his best. But otherwise, you're saying, I mean, we have every right to criticise Inzaghi for selecting Wallace, but the fact that he's even got Wallace as an option in the first place says a lot about the team that's been put together. Then you've got a young guy like Luis Felipe. That's almost a chance that he's been brought in and he's done a better job than anyone expected him to do. A better job than he did at Salernitana in Serie B. Bastos, Patrick. We're not. You mentioned Romulo. Yeah, I mean, he gives you Grinta, he gives you that kind of stuff. But he's. This isn't a player who's going to change your season. And I just think that you always have to take a step back and consider what he's been working with here, really, before we're willing to criticize him, because there's no easy way out. It's not like saying at Milan they've got Diego Laxalt sitting on the bench. We were talking about Laxalt as a potential option last summer, and we were talking about him like he was, going to change Lazio's entire season. He's hardly played for Milan. So, I mean, we can't afford to do that. But then again, that it shows over the course of the season, I think.
And they have our former captain that is retiring at Milan. He's not playing this season. If he was still at Lazio, I think he would start every single match, right, Biglia? So there's a big difference. And Ramel Gendi, I don't agree with you. The team Petkovic and Pioli had, for me, was better. Let's not forget that they had Miro Klose, I mean, what are we talking about? They had a Candreva that was unbelievable. They had Hernanes that was, a much better player than, much better character than Luis Alberto and Correa. He was a player that, in big circumstance, he was playing well. He wasn't a champion, but he was playing well. Diaz, Biava was probably the best central defender in the Lotito era, and I think that Acerbi on his own is not better than Biava Diaz. Marchetti, first year with Pioli, was unbelievable, probably the best goalkeeper of the Serie A. So no, I think Inzaghi's team is worse. Keita, let's not forget Keita, that was coming off from the bench. Lazio now has Caicedo coming off from the bench. What are we talking about, really? I mean, if this team is better than the first Pioli one, then I don't know. Barcelona is a Serie B team, probably.
I don't know if it's necessarily a worse team, but I would disagree that they got the best out of those teams in more so than Inzaghi did. I mean, Inzaghi has brought a level of consistency that those guys could never do. And I don't mean consistency in terms of performances week in, week out, but I mean consistency in terms of Lazio. Every year he's been there has been challenging for the European places. And yes, you can point to Pioli getting this team to third place in the Champions League playoff, but then what happened the next season? And that's the kind of point, is that Inzaghi's managed to do this over the long term in a way that those guys couldn't. I mean, by the time Petkovic left, his win percentage was under 50%. It's not very impressive. And obviously he won the Coppa Italia, and he'll be very fondly remembered for that. But I don't think we should, because the end to this season isn't going the way we want, that doesn't mean that we need to start romanticizing things of the past, because that's not going to help.
And Alistair, a lot of fans are asking what to do with Simone Inzaghi. As I said in my video today, I think Inzaghi made mistakes today, and I said it, starting Wallace and taking off Caicedo as first substitution. But again, I keep saying, managers make mistakes. I mean, I would like to remember that Guardiola is managing Manchester City and is considered the best manager in the world and have won Champions League only with Messi at Barcelona. So he has failed Bayern Munich, he has failed Manchester City, and Manchester City has spent how much this summer, and nobody is thinking we should sack Guardiola. And he made, Manchester City lost against Tottenham in the Champions League. I mean, that's much worse than losing against Atalanta, Lazio losing against Atalanta. So Inzaghi made mistakes? Absolutely. No doubt about. Should Lotito sack Inzaghi for this? Absolutely not. I think, Inzaghi was able to transform Patrick in a football player, Caicedo in a striker. So, we should be giving more credit to Inzaghi than people are giving him. And again, he made mistake, absolutely, like all the other manager do. But in this situation, I think he's the best option. And the other point is, have you read the names that have been linked to Lazio if Inzaghi lose? De Zerbi? Come on. De Biasi? If we lose Inzaghi and get De Biasi back, we're going to fight for the relegation in the next couple of years. So, again, Inzaghi is not perfect, but consider even the other options.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever tried to claim he's perfect, because we call him out on things he could have done better all the time. I mean, most weeks. But the other thing to bear in mind with Inzaghi, which I think now that he's been up here doing this pretty good job for quite a while now, is that he's still pretty new to this. I mean, this is wasn't that long ago he was getting his first taste of European football, and then juggling how to manage that with the Coppa Italia, and juggle how to do that with the league and with the squad he's got, and what he's going to do tactically, and how he's going to alter that. And he's a young guy, and this is his first job in senior football. And yeah, he is. He's making mistakes as he goes, like any coach does. but that doesn't mean that the best thing to do is rip it up and try again with someone else. I'm convinced still that he is going to get more out of this squad than anyone else, and I'm also convinced as well, importantly, I think that the club's more likely, that the hierarchy of this club is more likely to invest in his potential and in what he can do with this club than if he went. I think that the fact that it says a lot that Lotito had that interview last week saying, I was given this huge offer from Milinkovic, it would have been economically a big boost, a big thing for the club. But I'd made a promise to my coach, and yeah, this might just be Lotito doing Lotito things, but I don't think he would have come out and said that about many coaches. I think that the relationship between Inzaghi, Tare, Lotito, I think that is quite a good kind of relationship at the top of this team, and I'm hopeful that they can kick on and actually improve this team together. But I'm not convinced, like you say, that there's anyone out there who's realistically attainable who would suddenly come in and sort all these problems out and get Lazio playing in the top four every year, because let's be honest, Lazio haven't been doing that anyway. I mean, Lazio haven't been a regular top four team at any point in Lotito's ownership. So why is that suddenly the expectation now? I think we need to be realistic about it.
And the other thing is, at least I hope to have a Lazio fan managing Lazio in the last year, and finally we have one, and we cannot think that Inzaghi is not giving more than 100% when he's managing Lazio. So, you know, if Inzaghi leaves, probably you're not gonna get another Lazio fan, and you don't know how much he's gonna perform, how much he's gonna try, and so, you know, especially if it's not coming Conte or Mourinho, as I heard the Roma is looking to, then why would I get the Zerbi? And the other thing is, and I'm pretty convinced about that, Inzaghi is a manager that defends his team, defend his player. Even today he defended Wallace after the performance of today. But I'm pretty sure he's quite, how can I say, he's not happy about a lot of players he trusted. I'm thinking about Luis Alberto, I'm thinking about Ciro Immobile, and so on. I wouldn't be surprised if this summer Lazio would change a lot of things, a lot of players, and this would start from Simone Inzaghi and not from the players asking to leave. You know, after what Inzaghi did for Luis Alberto, seeing him playing so badly this year, I think, you know, knowing that Sevilla is interested in Luis Alberto, well, maybe Inzaghi could go to Tare and say, hey, okay, if they offer 20 million euros, then we can sell Luis Alberto and buy someone who guarantee to play well even in big matches, like Luis Alberto is not doing. You know, I'm pretty convinced that a lot of players would leave Lazio this summer, and it's not because Lazio, the players want to leave. It's because Inzaghi said they are not good enough for Lazio.
Yeah, well, I just want to pick up on a comment we've just had on Twitter as well, which is Stefanos Hendry has said, I think only Caicedo and Romulo play very well. Inzaghi was really clueless tactically. Atalanta dominated us tactically, but Inzaghi doesn't change anything during the match. I just wanted to pick up on that because I don't think that's true. I don't think that Atalanta dominated that game tactically. I think that game was actually very balanced, and Atalanta came out on top of it, sure, but there were chances at both ends. Lazio on another day could have won that, and what's lost it for them is a terrible individual error. Well, or two if you count the own goal as well.
I would have say three. Even the first goal.
Three, well, perhaps. I mean, that was a bit of a not a fluke, but it was a bit of a strange goal anyway. So I disagree that Atalanta bossed that game tactically. I think that tactically it was quite an interesting battle and was won by those mistakes. And in terms of Inzaghi not changing anything during the match, it's a strange time to suggest that, because this was one of the rare occasions in which he actually decided to fling on Pedro Neto and go for the back four and have a 4-2-3-1. So yes, it was pretty late in the day, and it was a bit of a kind of disaster last resort move, but he did try it. I think we've already agreed that we didn't think Caicedo should have come off for the first change, but he did make changes tactically, and in terms of how the whole game went, I don't think he was dominated in any way. I think it was just down to those individual errors.
And if I may, I would add that in the first half, if Ciro Immobile was the Ciro Immobile of last year, Lazio would have been 3-0 up, because Golini made a good save on the first shot on target, and then twice Lazio had a 3-against-2, and Ciro Immobile twice made the wrong pass to, I think the first time was Caicedo, the second time was to Luis Alberto, and with the right pass, the Lazio player would have been only in front of the goalkeeper, so you would expect to score them in that occasion. So I honestly think, if we recall the match of last year, Lazio-Atalanta, I think Lazio drew 1-1. Atalanta in the second half was dominating the match. Today didn't happen at all. Atalanta played well, but overall, if Lazio would have drawn this match, even won it, if Ciro Immobile would have scored the chances he had in the first half, I think no one would have complained about that. I think Atalanta is playing well, but not as well as in the past. I thought Lazio played well, without forgetting that Maruzic was playing, Romulo was playing on the left, Maruzic on the right, and pretty much didn't play all the first half, and things like that. I thought, it wasn't as dominated as it could have been, or it was last year, to be honest with you.
Do you want to hear a scary stat?
Yep.
Apparently, Ciro Immobile now has hit the 6-month mark since his last goal from open play at the Olimpico.
Yeah, I read it before. What was it? Lazio page that tweeted that?
Yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah, I know. And do you want to see? I don't know if you heard it, but Simone Inzaghi said, I think he was at Sky, said that Lazio had a lot of chances, and he doesn't remember Strakosha making any save at all. Which I'm thinking about, but I don't remember Strakosha making any good save, to be honest, today.
He made one really good save on Ilicic right at the start of the second half. And it was good to see, actually, because Strakosha was a bit of a doubt before this game, and then during the warm-up he came off early, and Proto was doing the warm-up instead of him, and so there are a few kind of whispers before the game that he might not be fit, but he was actually okay, and I thought he looked fine today, which was encouraging, because I don't think, with everything else that's going on, we want to lose him at this point.
No, I agree. He had a problem with the back starting, when was it, Friday, something like that. But no, I think, to be honest, I don't think there were Atalanta had that many chances. It was all thanks to Wallace, which, I laugh because I don't want to cry, basically.
Well, I mean, Ilicic had another really good chance in the first half, actually, when he got played through on goal and fluffed it and
again.
Shot. But
who should have covered there?
You'll never guess.
I watched the match and I said, "What Wallace is doing there? He's behind the." Yeah, and the thing is, I don't know if Acerbi didn't kill himself today after the match, he will never do. I mean, it must be really frustrating to play near those two players.
Well, you say those two players, but Bastos, I thought, had a good game and has generally been playing pretty well. I mean, Bastos, I don't want to say this really without touching wood, so both of my hands are currently touching the wooden table, but he's not really made any catastrophic errors for quite a long time now, as far as I can think.
Yeah, I agree, and I was a little bit harsh saying those two players, but it shouldn't be positive to say, well, he didn't make any mistakes in the last 8 months. Because
it's progress.
Yeah, but that's not the level we are fighting for. We should say, okay, this is the third month that the player Bastos is marking, doesn't touch the ball or doesn't score, So, but yeah, I still don't understand why Wallace played and Felipe Ramos didn't, especially, and I hate to go back to that, but semi-final of Coppa Italia against Milan at San Siro, the defense played really, really well. Milan didn't have a single chance, and it was Bastos, Acerbi, Felipe Ramos, and since then they never played together again. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, here's a question, another one I've picked up from Twitter. Arnor Sigurdsson, what do you think about Murgia? He's been important for Spal. Do you think he's good enough for Lazio next season?
I reply?
Yeah, go for it.
I think youngsters have to play, and you can see the difference, right? Murgia last year wasn't playing that much, and his performance wasn't as great as the year before. He needs to play consistently, and that's why I'm saying that instead of buying players that take off time from youngsters like Padel, Durmisi and things like that, let's trust the youngsters coming from Lazio Primavera that Lazio really feel are good, like Murgia, like Cataldi, and so on. Because they need to play, and they can be really good players, like Murgia. Murgia is, at the beginning with Spal, struggled because he didn't play for a long time. But now in the last matches, he's been really good. And I think he's a talented player, but needs to play, like Cataldi needs to play.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of great uncertainty with Murgia is just that what serves him better as a player, and there's been this suggestion of his loan being extended for the entirety of next season as well. And as things stand, I mean, it's obviously a bit dependent on what happens in the transfer window over the summer. But as things stand, with the way he's playing at Spal, with the way that Spal team are being coached and the football they're playing, I think from a Lazio perspective, we might actually get more benefit from him staying with Spal for another year and playing regular Serie A football in a similar kind of system than we would by him coming back, because I don't see him coming back into this team and immediately starting games. I mean, who's he going to supplant in this team? I mean, Parolo obviously is getting older and older, and he's not really getting any worse, which is probably frustrating for the younger guys. But then you've still got Danilo Cataldi, you've still got Valon Berisha, don't forget, who's constantly injured but is bound to be given a chance at some point. And then that's all those players are coming after your first choice two, who are obviously Alberto and Milinkovic. So in my opinion, it's been really encouraging. I did say when he went on loan, I thought it was a good club for him. I thought it was a good match, and I'm glad to be proven right. And I think that if that can be arranged for him to stay on loan for another year, not be sold, but go on loan for another year and see how he does, that could maybe be the best thing for everyone.
Yeah, could be an option, honestly. It depends what Lazio wants to do. Call him back just to be on the bench, then it's better if he plays with Spal. And if maybe with the extension of the loan we get Lazzari, that would be perfect.
Yeah, not bad. that would be a staggeringly good deal, to be honest.
You think it's impossible, huh?
I don't think Lazzari's impossible. I think it's impossible to say as part of the loan deal for Murgia. But no, I mean, it depends, because I think that there will be competition. It's hard to really say how much competition, but you've got to be willing to spend. And I think the thing I'm worried about goes back to January when Chelsea wanted 18 million for Zappacosta, and Lazio said no because they didn't want to pay that much. And Zappacosta, if anything, is a player with more prestige and more experience than Lazio has, and Lazio weren't willing to pay it. There's no way Spal will let Lazio go for less than 18 million this summer. So again, I just have doubts that they're going to be willing to spend that much. I reckon what's more likely to happen is that they'll make the Romulo deal permanent and then, dust off their hands and say, well, there you go, you've got your right wing back for next season, you're done, and move on to the next one. Unfortunately, I think that I think that Zappacosta deal was a missed opportunity. I think that could have been a really good January signing, and I think that was a very reasonable price. But there you go. Romulo's done a good job, so I'm not complaining too much, but I think it just puts me off the idea of Lazio being attainable this summer, because I'm not sure that Lotito will be willing to pay what they're going to ask for him.
Yeah. I'm honestly not convinced that Zappacosta was worthy all that money, but you have to take risk if you want to reach the Champions League. Think Milan is risking to not get to the Champions League after spending 70 million euros this winter. So, you have to take risk, because spending a lot of money, you probably have a bigger chance of getting good players. Now, Alistair, before we wrap it up, because I think it's time, Cagliari Lazio finally, Pedro Neto starting?
No chance. No. I mean, I'd be amazed. I'd be absolutely amazed. I mean, the thing is, there is still, even though the Champions League is gone, there is still position to play for in the league this season. Don't forget, we are at risk of falling out of the European spots entirely. I think that finishing in the top 7 is obviously the minimum expectation. And that involves, I would say, getting ahead of Torino, because we've still got to play Torino. So that would be in our own hands. If we can win all 3 of the next games, we finish in a European place, guaranteed, regardless of the final of the Coppa. And I think that is important. A lot of people will probably be sick of the Europa League by now, but I think it is important that we're there. So, in terms of Pedro Neto, I can't imagine him ever starting a game unless it's a total kind of free shot, and I don't think these games are.
Okay, I thought Coppa Italia's close, and I thought when he came in today, he was the only one trying to do something different, to change a little bit pace and doing really something in the match.
I get the feeling he almost tries a bit too hard, though. I don't know if you agree, but he made a really good impression the first couple of times he came off the bench, and then since then I don't think he's done quite as well, because I feel like he was almost it sounds stupid, but almost a bit too encouraged by that, and now he wants to make everything happen, and he's almost running around like a lunatic trying to make an impression. And you do want to see that desire, you want to see that willingness, but sometimes I feel like he needs to his youth is showing through a bit too much, and he needs to maybe think more about what duty he can perform in the team tactically, rather than trying to do everything single-handedly. It's maybe a bit harsh, because we've not really seen an awful lot of him, but it is encouraging at least to see Inzaghi try these things, even if it's too late, too little too late, and it's the 4-2-3-1, which is when you know he's desperate, and throwing Neto on, but we'll see. I think for now it's going to be Cagliari is going to be a chance for him to take one of those players out up front of the Caicedo, Correa, Immobile, give one of them a rest, give one of them 60 minutes, the other one 30, and do it the way he always does it. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because that's not an easy game, by the way. I mean, Cagliari's home record is really, really good. I can't remember where it is now, but earlier on this season anyway, it was only second to Juventus. So it's not going to be an easy game at all.
Well, with Lazio never is. I mean, but I thought it could give a rest to some players. So anyway, you're not convinced that Pedro Neto will start. We're gonna see. Anyway, Alistair, thank you very much for joining me. And guys, remember that you can find the podcast on Spreaker, on Spotify, on iTunes. So if you haven't subscribed, and you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to support us, there's our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Thank you very much, Alistair. We're going to talk next weekend. Bye.
Watching